Now, years ago, my family and I, we had launched 5 restaurants in 5 years in the
Wow.
Caribbean down in Puerto Rico. And we had the fast food courts locked down in the island. And when Taco Bell went it in on the island, we were approaching the end of our leases and found it was the perfect time to sell. So we got out and had made a good sell to Taco Bell to buy our fast food Mexican restaurants. We own we had the exclusivity of Mexican food in the food court, so
Right.
they had to buy us to get in. And we didn't do bad, but we probably could have done better if we'd had someone like you advising us on selling. But in our case, it was like we knew our leases were coming up, and the malls were probably going to prefer to get the big chain company over allowing us to renew our leases. So it was a risk we'd end up with nothing if we didn't sell.
And
You know,
Marco,
because
can I
they
address that? Because that is exactly a point that I want to make to people, which is that most of the time businesses are sold because of some substantial event, right? It could be your leases are going up. It could be you want to retire. It could be a divorce. It could be a partnership gone bad. It could be a financial calamity. It could be a health issue. Most of the time that small and medium businesses go on the market, it is because of something that's prompted the transaction. And one of the points that I want to make is that if you do it, if you are a business owner and you decide to sell because of something that's kind of forcing you to do it or encouraging you to do it, and you don't have a lot of time and planning behind it, you are going to hurt yourself. You're going to get less money for the business. You're not going to get the maximum value you can. And that is why I want to encourage every business owner to start to think about, what would this business look like if I had to sell it today? And what would it look like if I want to sell it 2 years from now, 3 years from now, et cetera? As an advisor, people call me all day long and say, "Hey, Marty, I want to sell my business. How much can I get for it?" And 99% of the time, they want to sell it right then and there. And if they would have called me a year in advance or 2 years in advance, those numbers would be massively higher, because we can work with a business owner to help them position the business so that it's going to sell the fastest and easiest and for the highest amount of money. But when somebody calls me and said, "Oh, we just realized our lease is up, and so we want to sell before Taco Bell comes in and takes it over," you're kind of under pressure, right? You've weakened your negotiating stance. And so the best time to contact someone like me is 2 to 3 years in advance to make sure your business is positioned properly. Locking up long-term contracts can be good. You talked about this lease situation with your restaurants in the Caribbean. And again, I wasn't there. I don't know the exact situation, but I'm curious what would have happened if you would be long before the second you smelled Taco Bell sniffing around, right? You knew they were coming. What would have happened if you would have gone to the food courts and tried aggressively to get some long-term leases rather than knowing your leases were coming up way in advance? If you would have locked up some long-term leases, how much more would Taco Bell have paid you to take over those leases versus just taking over those empty slots that you'd left behind with the leases ending? Would that have made a difference?
Yeah, it could have made a huge difference. I mean, we had 7 year leases when we went in. By the time we were selling Taco Bell, we probably had a year and a half left on those leases. In our mind, it was like, okay, yeah, we probably should have, if we'd had the right advice, or tried to re-up the leases in advance. Now, when Taco Bell comes in, look, we still have 7 years, or now another 8 years on these leases left. So you're gonna have to buy us out at a pretty penny,
That's right.
or wait 7 more years.
Right.
So
So if
then
you would have called me 2 years before you were ready to sell, I would have said, "When's your lease due?" And you would have said, "Well, it's due in, or it's end up in 3 years." And we would have looked at, okay, let's go in and let's see if we can negotiate for a really good long-term lease plan, because the strength of those leases, that is something that on brick and mortar businesses, the acquirers are going to look at. That's a big sticking point, is what's going to happen with the real estate. They want to know that the lease rates are locked in at a good low rate, now, especially with prices of real estate and leases going up. not so much commercial office space, wasteland right now, but a lot of retail space and good commercial space like food courts, a lot of those rates are going up. And so an acquirer is going to look at that and say, ooh, you locked in a really nice rate for a long term. That's a premium we're going to pay you extra for. So that's an example of staging the business, the finances, the personnel, the processes, the tools and resources that the business has.
And we didn't do bad, but we probably could have done better if we'd had someone like you advising us on selling.